Oh, more people coming.
Okay, good.
So we'll just take a minute so everyone can finish their clapping.
Please.
Ed Sobin's not clapping. I don't get it. What's happened, Ed? All right, Manny Sanudo's coming. Well, we still have more clamoring in, so we'll give it another minute or two, and then we'll welcome everybody and hand it over to you.
I can't find what happened to Zoom unless, oh well, I'll figure it out.
I mean, I see the first picture there.
Yeah, but I don't know where my little thing went to bring up chat. I can't see chat, so.
Oh, it should, if you go towards the edge of wherever it is that you have Zoom, up, down, left, right, somewhere, you'll get the little pop-up for the chat. Maybe I didn't activate it, but now it's activated.
No,
I'll relay the chat to you. Don't you worry
okay.
about the chat.
All
You just
right.
focus on yourself, and I'll interrupt you when there's a question from the group.
Okay.
Okay, we're up to 18 people, so, and we're at 7:02. I'll give it one more minute.
Okay.
Get started. All right. Well, buonanotte a tutti. Welcome, bienvenuto to Friday Night at the Movies. Tonight we have a special guest, Leslie Tierstein, who lives in Arlington, Virginia, and is a very good friend of the club, who has over the last few years helped me in any one of the DC weekend trips that we've had. She's advised me, and she's occasionally joined in and helped lead. And so it's really a pleasure and honor to have her back. I know she's also a past president of this club in one incarnation or another. So it's great to have her back. And without further ado, she's spent some interesting time in Italy that is not the typical, let's put it that way. And so without further ado, I welcome you, Leslie, and I hand it over to you.
Thank you, Alan. Well, here's the only picture I have of myself from this Italy trip, which was by myself. And I'll explain how we got there and how I got to Italy. And as Alan said, if you have any questions or comments, put them into the chat. So I was looking to improve my Italian and go to Italy. And I always travel with a bicycle. But I did not want a tour with a bunch of other Americans, or I didn't want a tour in general. What I found was a film festival, because I'm a big film fan, called Cinema Ritrovato, Rediscovered Cinema, about restored and revived films. And that was happening in Bologna. And the nearest airport was, well, nearest big airport that I could get a flight to from the United States without too much hassle was Milan. So I flew into Milan, spent some time there at the beginning and end of my trip, and then went to Bologna. So this will be it's a study of mostly utility and commuter cycling in Italy. And it's 3 years ago. Things have changed a little bit, but if you see anything, let me know. It was a fantastic vacation. I saw so many movies. I did some good bicycling, and I loved Bologna. So it was great.
So you were full of baloney? Is that it?
Oh, please.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Okay. All right. Well, so anyhow, thank you, Google Maps. this is Tuscany where all the bicycling is. And if you attended David Schlichting's talks, he did a lot of tours up in the Alps and this region up here. You could see where it's getting all hilly up there. But I was basically in the flat. The Milan International Airport is about 50 kilometers from the city. So you fly into there, take a train or however you want to get to Milan. And then I took a commuter train from there to Bologna. At the end of the trip, took the same train back to Milan and then flew home. So I think I was there probably 2 weeks total, more or less. I'd have to look at my reservations and the dates on my photos to find out, but it was great. So you start out in Milan. Now Milan is a big, if we read, I have to update these notes to be updated with COVID-19. It's part of the province of Lombardy, which was hit hardest by the COVID-19. And it's really horrible. But it is a huge city, very commercial, very industrial, the north of Italy. Lots to see. And I was I was mostly being a tourist there. The title page was taken in a fantastic park, the Parco Sempione. There were lots of people riding folding bicycles, and I got stopped by a guy who admired my bicycle, so he took my picture. And there is the bicycle parked in a tourist area, which is Santa Maria delle Grazie, and that's the church where you can see Leonardo's The Last Supper. Now, in Italy, most places have lots of bike parking, but not the big tourist areas because they're usually mobs. So notice the bike just parked to a no parking sign. And you need a reservation to get in to see The Last Supper, but it's worth it. They recently restored something. They have new lighting. They show you before and after pictures. It's the most climate controlled place I've ever seen. Like they don't want you breathing on the picture. So they limit the number. It's all completely sealed, but negative pressure room, who knows? They limit the number of people who can come in one time. It's double sealed so that the outside air doesn't get in. You obviously need a reservation, but this is, no matter how many times you see a reproduction, and I tried to get close-ups and see some of this, nothing can substitute for the real thing. That was just such a joy.
You had a question about your bike. So it's a Bike Friday. Do you want to talk a little bit about it and bringing it with you and whatnot?
Oh, sure. I've had this Bike Friday for several years. I bought it when I was doing a lot of travel on business. And, oh no, actually, I bought it when I had an office out in California, telecommuting before it was required. And I got tired of and I was bringing this one back and forth with me. I also brought it back and forth with me to New Jersey. So it's a Bike Friday, and it's a really good bike if you're ever going to buy a folding bike for really touring and not just riding around town. Like a Brompton is great for riding around town, and it folds up teensy weensy and carries more easily than this. But this fits great in an airplane. It has 21 gears or 24, I forget. So I've done loaded touring on this. You'll see pictures of it a little bit later with some panniers on it, although I didn't do any loaded touring on this trip, but I have. And it has the gears by having an internal front hub rather than a front derailleur. So people look at it and say, what, you don't have any gears? How many gears you have? But it does have internal 3 gears times whatever it is, 7 or 8 on the back. And it folds up very nicely and rides like a real bike. And I answer any other questions about it. Again, the model is a New World Tourist. All right.
Wait,
So
we do have a comment that I want to chime in from Debbie
okay.
Friedman that she borrowed Sharon Benke's Bike Friday for her 2-week trip to the Loire Valley, and it was fantastic. So you're getting hey, maybe we should ask Debbie Friedman to give a Friday night at the movies talk about her trip to Loire Valley. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
Next
sure.
week, by the way, we have Jacqueline Gitkow is going to talk about Iowa and North Carolina. Not to steal your thunder, though, Leslie, just to insert a little marketing hype
Oh,
there.
it's too bad. Is Debbie Friedman here today? I know she's a big movie fan,
She
but
is, she is. So
oh,
she'll be
okay.
keen to see your movie list there, I'm sure.
Wonderful. All right. Anyhow, but just wandering around the city of Italy, I everything is absolutely stunning, and these were just threaded knot sculptures that they had all over the place. I mean, if you look at the one on the right carefully, you'll see it's actually a needle with thread going through it. I don't know what they're made out of. I couldn't get close enough, or I didn't try, but they were absolutely stunning, and they were just all over town. So I wasn't concentrating on going to a lot of museums. Oh, I skipped the Duomo. I mean, there was a picture of the Duomo back there, the huge cathedral, which is absolutely stunning. But yeah, there it is. The Duomo, no bike parking outside the Duomo. I went to very few, the big museums. There's another one, Pinacoteca de Brera, that I liked. But what I really liked is Italy's first shopping mall, the Galleria. I don't have any pictures of that. I have one picture of something on the inside, but I didn't put it in here. The architecture is magnificent. It's like a mid 19th century, huge, enclosed dome with obviously very expensive shopping. If you look for any of this stuff on Google Maps now, of course, it all says closed. But so that's the Duomo, huge Romanesque cathedral. And there's no closer bike parking, and I was parked at whatever this is, looks like an exit from the metro. And there's my threaded knot sculptures. Oh, I was actually working while I was in Milan. And the city center is quite medieval and Renaissance and old. And all of the commercial buildings are to the north of the city. And I was working for Accenture, which is why I took this picture of me. You can see, I guess I've got the computer on the back of the bike because I was going into the office, and the panniers also on the bike. But one of my pet projects is I have to read a lot of documentation, technical, and I know Italian, so I used to read and Accenture is a multinational company, so I used to read some of this stuff in Italian, and I used to get a kick out of how many English words showed up in the Italian. So this was an interesting project for me to just collect signs in Italy that were, quote, in Italian, but had English words. So here we have a couple of them. And first I thought, oh my goodness, it's just going to be technical stuff. So, here, liberate your smartphone. There really is an Italian word for smartphone, but everybody just says lo smartphone. And here's more typical. I mean, even if it's not, you know, technical, this business is the top. That's obviously not Italian. So it was interesting to see that. I mean, I have a glossary of these words actually that I've made up, but I think I'll spare you that. It's just, il website is Italian, il networking, it just goes on and on and on. And now, of course, they've started doing it with COVID-19.
There is a question, and this is the appropriate place perhaps to ask you it, or maybe incorporate it into your answers. What kind of
Okay.
lock did you bring?
We're just getting to that.
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay. Because I brought the wrong lock. I brought my Suburban lock, and people told me the bike's going to get stolen in 2 seconds. Here are there's many different kinds of bike racks. These are just, I circled them to make them clearer. They're just the standard, whatever these racks are called, that you hook bicycles to. But the way they're arranged is interesting because they've got them lining up at the edge of the sidewalk. And I think it's partly for bike parking and partly to keep bicycles going farther on the sidewalk. But these on the right are the best kind of racks that I have ever seen. And we'll see how you can, I think I have the next picture. Okay. Can we see any locks there? No. Yeah, see here, people have these kind of locks, and I actually bought one of these locks. It's a really heavy chain with, I could go get it and show it to you. Really heavy chain with, just a lock part here that's also very sturdy. But the point of this was actually to show you, here's typical bikes. So you look at all the, oh my goodness, there's a bicycle helmet there. I don't think, or unless that's my bike, I would be very surprised. But you know, here the bikes have, the racks for each bike have two parts. This is this little thing where you slip your front wheel, and then something, here you slip the front wheel right in there, and then something that extends farther. So you take your heavy duty chain and you lock it around there to lock your bike. And I think I have a couple other, let's see, you can see the chain there showing that the bike is, that's how the bike is locked. There's some that are even more, I think later on I have another picture of more bikes locked. It's showing you, so they have a problem with bike theft. They also have a problem with, you know, people ride, these were my problems. There's lots of streets with paving stones because, you know, it's an old city. You know, whatever the Italian equivalent of cobblestones is, but they're shaped like this. And lots of streetcar tracks. It's wonderful that people get around by the streetcar, but that's like 4 streetcar tracks all in a row that you had to go over at an angle. When I was there, like it was, you know, 3 years ago, I was having some trouble with Ride with GPS. It was worse within the city walls of Bologna than it was within Milan. But I even have that here, you know, occasionally I'll have my computer on and I'll go between some high buildings and it'll temporarily pause and then immediately come back on. So I don't think that's anything particular or specific. It's just, you know, big cities have that problem. Here's one of my favorite, okay, so trains, it's just like Amtrak instituted now. Buy the ticket ahead of time on a particular train and get the discounted rate. One of the things that was pretty annoying, right, so I had the Bike Friday packed in a suitcase and I had another rollerboard thing, and I could not find elevators anywhere. I mean, they have to have them. Oh, look, that looks like a sign for an elevator over there. But they're few and far between. I mean, so don't take, you know, the ADA for granted. I mean, that's why we have great signs and lots of elevators and, you know, little indents in the streets to roll things down. So that was a big issue with schlepping the bike around in its suitcase. Now, this was one of my favorite signs in the train station. Now, most stuff is translated to English. So here it says exits, English and Italian. Trains, English, Italian. Kiss and ride. I don't know if that's used places other than Washington, D.C., but that's the place where you go to pick people up at the metro stops. Kiss and ride needs no translation. And I guess neither does taxi. And parcheggi was borrowed many, many years ago to mean a parking station. So I love this ride, and we forget whether it was in the Bologna or the Milan train station. But be aware, you know, you're going to have to look hard and fast for an elevator if you're schlepping a lot of stuff. So finally I got to Bologna. I didn't do much bicycling. I tried to get out. Most of it was between the 5 movie theaters that were showing films in the Cinema Ritrovato. I mean, I made a list of the films that I saw. A lot of them were American because it means we're doing rediscovered or restored films. Who, you know, recognizes Robert Mitchum here? He was in a couple of the films. That was the poster for it. But it doesn't matter because the films were subtitled, or if there was silence, they were intertitled in both English and another, you know, and usually, well, it was subtitled usually in Italian, and sometimes there were 2 subtitles on the screen. Sometimes there were 2 intertitles, you know, and you took what you could get because some of the films are so hard to find if they're old enough. But so that was what I was doing most of the time, is seeing these films. Here's the first film that was, it's shown in, there's a huge plaza, Piazza Maggiore, in the middle of the old medieval town. I don't know, you can't see the scope of it, but there's a screen takes up that, and there's thousands of seats sitting there outdoors. So obviously the screenings start quite late, 8:30 or 9. And the film that was being shown was The Graduate, of course, Italian subtitles. It holds up very well. It was the 50th anniversary and it was recently restored. So it was absolutely wonderful to see this film with a bunch of mostly Europeans who were loving it, and I was loving it too. All right, but now bicycling. I was getting around by bicycle. I had a hotel which was, listed with the festival. It said it had an elevator, but the elevators are so small that I could not get my bicycle into the elevator. So I left it on I guess this is a no parking sign all during the day and just brought it upstairs at night. And even, look at all these bicycles. There's another rack just as big as that right behind it. And they're all packed full. I would have used the bike rack, except there was never any space in it. It was just pretty incredible. So the bike lived there. It was fine during the day, and then I just schlepped it up 2 flights of stairs at night. Now the streets are really very narrow. I mean, it's a medieval town. I think I have a picture of 1 or 2 streets. Can we see any locks here on these bikes? Yeah, see, there's a lock there. They're pretty substantial. And I have showing you a bunch of locks in a later slide anyhow. But there are actually 2 levels. You see how some of the bikes are raised to squeeze more bicycles into a very narrow space on the sidewalk. So they really thought this through. Yes, here's again, can they get any more bicycle parking here? Can you imagine space like this allotted in New York for bicycle parking? This is all just daily bicycle parking right near the main railroad station, just outside the historic center in Bologna. It just goes, I can't even count the number of bikes. And they have a very active bicycle community. This is the Velo station. It provides, support, rental bicycles, repair tools. People are multilingual, so you can go in and get it. They were being activists because they have to restrict traffic in the center of town because the streets are minuscule. But the community was opposing a measure to allow the vehicular traffic in for more hours of the day. I mean, I think it was just allowed in maybe an hour in the morning, an hour in the night. They wanted to increase that and allow them in at the weekend. And I have no idea how that was decided. But
Leslie, we have a question for you. Can people lock their bikes at random places or poles like here in New York City? Some places forbid that, or do people all use heavy-duty locks?
well, people all use the heavy-duty locks. People bring the bicycles inside sometimes. It's allowed. I never saw anything that said no bicycles allowed in this building. I didn't see bikes. I saw bikes parked like mine to various poles, but there aren't that many. Then you can usually find a rack someplace or a place to put the bike. So I didn't notice much of that. This is what I did notice. I don't think I ever saw anybody in Lycra except early in the morning who were on training rides. And I don't think I ever saw anybody in a helmet except children who were out with their parents. And most of the bicyclists looked like they were just, so in this country now, gradually we're getting more and more, quote, transportation bicycles, like, this mother just going along with her kid, riding around. And, I saw a couple of transportation tandems, and you saw what the bikes were like that were parked. They're all, cruisers. They have gears. If you stay in the center of Bologna, it's pretty flat, but as soon as you leave town, it's hilly. So they have gears, but they're just, heavy bikes, and you ride upright and you have a good lock, and that's how you get around, and you dress like a normal person here. These were actually the rental bikes that were available with a ticket to the movie festival. These are pretty typical of the bikes that I saw around town. So really, you know, fenders, lights, chain guard, skirt guard, rack for your stuff. Oh yeah, look at, there's a kryptonite type lock over there locking. Well, looks like these bikes are just two bikes locked together. So here were bikes. Yeah, when I went, that's right. When I went to the movie theater, sometimes I couldn't find a parking spot. So I would just lock it to, you know, a pole that was there. Or, you know, I saw lots of bikes just locked to each other. But, you know, you just try, since the sidewalks are so narrow, just people are very careful about where they park. Um, and the brand of the bike I had never heard of, a Cinzia. Evidently it's made in Bologna. I just rode one of these once to try it out. It rides like a bike, rides like a, you know, a heavy commuter bike, but it rode very well and they were all maintained very well. At first I was taken aback. I saw the bike share. This is actually from Milan. And why are there two different colors of bicycles? Well, because the red ones are electric and the orange ones are, quote, traditional bikes. And I noticed, I just read my sign, the actual sign that's affixed on the kiosks, again, this is Milan, lots and lots of tourists, is in English, and it explains it and gives all the prices. But, you know, they really wanted you to download the app, so I'm assuming that the app must have been in Italian. And this is, I saw, this is, remember, 3 years ago, I was incredible the number of electric bikes I saw, and they were all over, just both in the rentals and in general. And again, we're finally catching up to Europe in that regard. And the same thing, I saw, well, how do they support the electric bikes? Yes, you paid for the electric bike if you rode it, and you didn't pay if you had a subscription for just the bike rental. All right, so here's a typical, this is a bike that's locked inside the locked courtyard of my Airbnb in Milan. And that's pretty common. Note the chain. The kids' bikes, I don't even think were locked, you know, so people just have them and somehow they're locked. You know, I assume if these bikes go out, they get locked, but this is a pretty typical lock, a very hardcore chain, and a pretty typical bike as well.
Well, was the non e-bike free, or was there a difference
Well,
in
it was, if you
pricing?
had to pay for it, but you know, if you had a subscription, it's the same as in this country. If you have a yearly subscription, you don't have to pay for it extra. But the e-bike, you still have to pay for even if you have a subscription. And I think that's how they work around here, because those e-bikes need to be charged in addition to being maintained. All right, so that was just my Airbnb in Milan. It was delightful to come back, but you know, my host let me bring my bike into the apartment, which was nice. But yeah, I just said they were just parked there all the time. Well, when they weren't out, and you know, locked or not, as the case may be, but within a locked courtyard, they were felt to be safe. All right, so here's again typical lock and bike. Again, really, really beefy padlock and a pretty secure and thick chain, kind of standard. Again, look at all the bike racks there. There's motorcycles as well. You just run out of room. So in answer to your question, yeah, you park it where you can park it. This one I loved. I mean, sometimes you'd pass stores and there'd be bicycles in the window. And I was saying, why is this? But so did you know that Porsche makes a bicycle? I certainly didn't. And this was in a high class men's store. So whether it was the owner's bike or just supposed to show, oh, look how cool we are, here's a Porsche bike, and wear it with your custom made clothing that you're going to buy here, I have no idea. You know, but the same thing here. Here's a bicycle in the window. I think this was the owner's bicycle. The owner came to the store with her kid or with two people or something in a bookstore. The good thing, you know, Bologna has fantastic bookstores. You know, a COVID-19 note, the Italians are now reopening businesses, and the bookstores, people said the bookstores have to be in the first wave of what gets reopened. Uh, so I think they did that, and bookstores are now open so that, God forbid, they don't have to buy books at the supermarkets. So same, a nice little tandem, a nice tandem. Same thing. This is a commuting and utility bicycle, but in the window of a bookstore, bike in a bookstore. Oh yes, I love this. This was probably one of the few times I saw a helmet. This is an e-bike ridden by the Postal Service to do their deliveries. It was just parked. You can see the great way to carry the satchel for the bike deliveries. Here it says Poste Italiane. Just parked there. Oh look, must be really heavy. It has the double kickstand like you see on motorcycles too. So that was great. Again, I saw the helmet. I didn't see it on a person's head though. It was just sitting on the back of the bike. Maybe the Italian government says you should wear a helmet when you're delivering our mail. A lot of the bike stores were teensy. This one I just passed. It must not have been. It must have been a day it was closed. But I mean, you could see in the reflection of the window, there's bikes parked again. Oh, that looks like they're parked on the no parking sign right back there. So, yeah, they have the same problems as we do, even though they've got bike racks all over the place. But this bike shop, I mean, this is actually the total width of the store. I mean, I peeked in and I said, oh, it looks very narrow. Maybe it extends or it goes, takes up other width behind other frontage. No, that's the total width of the store. And they really specialize in selling you a bike or doing repairs. So where do you buy your accessories? In a hardware store. This is a hardware store. Can you see the cleaning supplies over here next to the full range of locks? So here's something kryptonite. They big, I'm not sure, kryptonite I think was sold there. I can't see, but the biggest brand of U-locks was at Abus. It's German. And here's some chain locks. Now I made a mistake when I bought a really good lock chain. I'm not sure what make it is, but I lost one of the keys and they can't duplicate it in hardware stores in this country. So I have to go back to Italy so I can get a spare key made for my bicycle lock. And so here's, another hardware store where they've got baskets. They've got, so this one doesn't look quite as serious, maybe more toward, more casual rider. It's got bells, it's got baskets. I don't know what this is, some kind of cover. Again, it's just a quarter of a hardware store though. So that's where you go if you need a bike accessory. They don't have these in the bike shops, except if you get into the suburbs, you get into the bigger bike shops like this one. Now, I didn't know Rossignoli made bikes. I thought they made skis. But here's a Rossignoli bike shop. They were very friendly. They let you test ride the bikes. Here's a rider coming out for a ride. It was just fantastic, but space is at such a premium that this is obvious. This is in some suburb of Bologna. I forget how far from the center of town, but I did get out 1 or 2 days out of town to see that stuff.
Did you see any Bromptons around? Somebody's asking.
I did not. The guy on my bike, they have turns a lot. As opposed to in the UK, I saw a lot of Bromptons, but they had turns, TERN, and some other folding bikes. Again, specific to Italy, I don't think they even get exported here, like that Cinzia that we saw that was the rental bike in Bologna. But they were all over the place. Now, this is one of my favorites. In the window of the Rossignoli shop, if you can see this bike was ridden by Fausto Coppi in the Tour de France. Is it 1966 or 1946? And what's special, if you have shifting problems now, this was the rear derailleur shift lever. And it was very controversial. The rider had to actually reach down and push the lever in order to shift the gears. The Tour de France wasn't going to allow it, but I think they finally allow it. So if you've got electronic shifting, just thank God you've got electronic shifting. If you've got a hand shifter, even a down tube shifter, much better than this. And this was, of course, invented by Tullio Campagnolo. And it's in the window of that Rossignoli bike shop. Now, here's a typical street in Bologna. I was very impressed. They've got lots of counterflow lanes. Well, here's the bike going in the direction. I guess if you're counterflow, you just go on the sidewalk. And you see it's senza unica, one way, except buses and bicycles. And there's lots of streets like that. But that's the typical, I mean, that's what the town looks like. The old town, just the narrow streets, and the buildings come right up. There's no like little porches or anything. It's really incredible. All right, but they are encouraging bicycling. So, you know, here is both Milan and Bologna. You could find like on street corners, here's maps, and here's the app that you can download. And here's where all our, you know, bike routes are, and they're signed on the street. Oh, and in Bologna, here's the town wall. So make sure you know how you get through the town wall if you're going to do that. But it was very nice, and you know, so you could download a map or you could just take a look. I was just, you know, running and taking notes of where I wanted to go. Very well documented. They really wanted to encourage everybody to bicycle. And you can't really see this. Here's from here to there, the routes that unite the city, and it explains all of the routes and gives you that. And again, there's an app where you can download them. And these are, you know, here's the city walls, and in every direction outside of the city, they have these maps for you. And so, you know, one day I decided, oh, you know, the movies were running from like 10 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. And one day I decided, oh, there was no morning movie I wanted to see. I had time to leave the city and go for a ride in the burbs. So I actually picked a place to go. And I guess I went to Santa Viola. And that was the route. And this is part of how it's signed. So they still have issues, right? So here, you know, there's a pole there and you have to go around the pole. But you've got bi-directional bike lanes and a place for the walkers. Now that's still, you know, near the city. I mean, you could see there's a wall there. But when you get farther out of town, you either go on signed streets or, what happened to my other stuff? Oh, it comes next. So this is where I was going. It's a suburb just outside of Bologna. The MAST Museum, MAST stands for Manufacture, Art, Experimentation, and Technology. I just decided, you know, I want to see something different. Why do I have to go? You know, I saw the Last Supper, I saw the Duomo, I was to the Literary Museum, the Pinacoteca. This was just a fantastic museum, and obviously I just lifted this picture. You can see where it says MAST here, and they had a wonderful exhibit of photographs. But I really wanted to take a picture of this sculpture, and I wasn't allowed to. So, just so happens, the sculpture is by the artist, the sculptor Mark di Suvero, and he has this very similar sculpture in the sculpture garden in Washington, D.C. And I was just riding past this the other day, escaping, you know, on my exercise, get out of the house ride. And I said, oh, I can take that picture. And because you should just look up Di Suvero, these constructions are fantastic and I really love them. And if you ever get to DC, we'll go visit the sculpture garden and go take a look at this. And it's just phenomenal. So that was a highlight for me, both the ride to the MAST Museum and
Where is the sculpture garden in DC? And apparently he's also in Storm King.
Yeah, he's in a bunch of places. It's right downtown, 7th Street and Constitution or Independence.
Also, there was a question. I don't know if you're going to get back. I think you are going to get back to uh, the picture of the bike path on the street. Is there any conflict between bikes, people, and other modes in the bike lane, or do they get along?
No, they get along. I never saw any conflicts. I mean, I just remember I wasn't, it was very short ride. Well, first of all, there's no cars on a lot of the streets. Remember, the cars are restricted from the historical center of Bologna. And I just remember it must have been like under half a mile from my hotel to the theater where I was seeing many of my movies. And just on my morning commute, I would see at least 10 bicycles coming toward me on those little teensy roads on, just taking up the street. And it was fantastic. There was so much bike traffic. Again, you have the parking problem, but everybody gets around by bike because, the center of the historical center is not conducive to car traffic. um, and no, I never saw any conflicts between the walkers and the bicycles. But, I wasn't bicycling that much. And, I was on some streets that did allow cars, and everybody was very polite and considerate.
Wow. Judy adds that his sculptures are also in Astoria at the Socrates Sculpture Park. Oh, that's
Mm.
that place down by the water there, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Near the, it's on our graffiti ride. We go through there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
Cool.
I just love this sculpture and I love that museum. And
Thank
I
you,
don't know how
Judy.
I found it. I was looking. I said, oh, that looks fantastic. And the exhibit that they were having, the photographs of people, had some known pictures and some I had never
Wow.
heard.
You can tell people from your roots here in the New York area that he actually got his start at the Socrates Sculpture Park,
Okay.
according to Judy.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
Cool.
But anyhow, this is the route coming back into town. So off road, I come down here. It's next to a little river right there, uh, and it's off road. And on one of the walls next to it, they said, "Welcome to Bologna." So you're getting close. It was just, oh, here they have the sign again. Uh, Pedestrians over here and bicycles over there. So, and people had no problem with it. I guess they're just used to it. All right. Well, I had some time for some other stuff besides for the movies. Um, I tried to go to the museums that I wouldn't find in the United States, like the Mast. There's a Museum of the Resistance, very Italian. There's a little teensy museum that I passed on my way to the Mast of communication. I guess it has something to do with Marconi because he was Italian. I have no idea if he had anything to do with Bologna. And there's also a Jewish museum in the former ghetto. So here's, the root of the Jews, and that's the former ghetto. They have the streets there. I guess that's the museum up there. And on one of the they have a outside of the ghetto. They have a new synagogue, and they have just this plaque commemorating, because the Italians protected the Jews for part of World War II, and then when the Nazis took over, it was all over. So people got deported, and
Is that the real shape of the ghetto? It looks like a hand.
well, yeah, that's how it is. I mean, I think that it is the real shape of the ghetto. It was enclosed. So somehow they enclosed it that way. The streets, I think those are like, I'm not sure if those are one-way signs for the streets, but yeah, it pretty much is one way in and one way out still of those old streets because it was a ghetto. And where'd my mouse go? Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. And then I did some walking around town, and this is stuff in Italian, but I just loved it. There is Bologna used to be built on canals. I looked for my picture of a canal and couldn't find it. And there is one canal left. I think about the same time that Venice was built, they also put canals in Bologna. Um, they have lots of bookstores, which are just fantastic. I was going to try to do a translation of this into English, but then I would have had to learn how to do flow charts and process flows in PowerPoint. And I just couldn't face it. But, you know, I think I should just show this to people. I'll translate it and show it to them. And the top thing is there's an argument, there's a discussion going on, and it has two branches. And one of them says, I am informed about the topic, and then the result is, I speak. The other one says, direct translation, I don't know shit. And then there's two branches. I inform myself, I figured it out, and I can speak. Or if you don't know anything, I stay silent. And so I just think you hand this out. I forget where it is. There was a lot of political stuff going on, and this is one of them on the right. This is, look at another expression from English that gets used in Italian. This is the LGBT Center. They're having special summer program. And this is the boot of Italy refashioned. I just thought that was so brilliant. And I love the poster, so I took a picture of it. And they were having activities. They had a wonderful little garden, and, you know, a deli, whatever the Italian equivalent is, where you could order stuff and part of your payment went to them, and you could just sit out there in the garden. It was just delightful. And this was, again, I discovered it on one of my bike rides when I wasn't going between movie theaters.
Did you happen to discover any commemoration of Marconi being born there? Because
I did
apparently,
not. I just saw the Museum of Communication, but I didn't have it, you know, and I saw that in when I was doing research for it just recently. But, you know, somebody could look up Marconi. But the
yep.
other thing I really enjoyed, and this is like almost to the end of the presentation, but I do have an appendix if we want to. Now, remember how the streets were really narrow, and there's storefronts there, and they come right up to the sidewalk. And what they have on them is these little metal grates, but people paint over the metal grates to decorate them, which can either have something to do with what the store is or just a lovely picture. Now, you don't see these during the day because they're raised and you see into the storefront. But I used to go for a run every morning, and I would see these and snap the pictures. So this is just two of them. Now the one on the left is interesting because this language is not Italian. This is Bolognese, which was another dialect descended from Latin, the same way as what's now standard Italian is descended from Latin. And it was actually spoken quite a bit until World War II. And now they're trying to, you know, rehabilitate it and get the young people to talk to it. So this one says, you know, La Bottega del Contadino, the farmer market. And, you know, you can tell, you know, I guess the rest of it is in Italian. It's fruit and vegetables from Monday to Friday. And here's the Saturday hours. And then this is just another, you can see the slats of the metal grills if you look. And this one says, if we're closed, go to the business next door. And these two towers are historical markers for Bologna. And here's a lighthouse. I'm not quite sure where this comes in. But the two towers are there on the edge of town. They can be visited, but they show up in all the iconography of Bologna. And so people paint them on their little storefronts. I have a bunch more pictures of these things if people want to see them. I think we're almost done. One more. Right. So this year, I was seriously considering going back to the film festival and doing some actual bike touring, probably in Tuscany. I have toured in the lake region north of Milan. It's absolutely stunning. If you know, Como and Lugano and across to Verona and across to Venice, just stunning. I haven't done any touring in Tuscany. I started in that direction one day, and as soon as I got to the first hill, I said, no, not happening. Now, I was at an Airbnb Milan. It worked very well. I was actually in a teensy hotel in Bologna. I've since read reports that, well, until this current crisis, Bologna was being overrun by Airbnb residents. I'm not sure, you know, how true that is. There's a huge university there. I mean, the university has a Department of Cinema Studies, which is world known, which is why, you know, part of the reason that this festival happens there. And the interesting part for me is English is the default language in Bologna. Um, I remember trying to get my nails done and talking to the Korean women, who were probably Korean, in English rather than Italian, because they didn't talk Italian. I mean, why learn Italian? The other time, it was interesting. I went to a synagogue, and the security is incredible. I mean, they wouldn't even let me in without pre-registering. And when I went there on Saturday morning to actually attend, there were two Israelis stationed outside. And again, their English was better than their Italian, so we talked in English. So I did get to practice my Italian. Now, that's the end of my prepared talk. I can show people uh, all those slides I've taken decorating the doors if they'd like, or we can ask questions. So it's up to you. I'm going to put that away. So what do you think? Any questions? What do people want to do now?
It's like a graffiti ride. Why don't you take them through those pictures? And there is one
Okay.
other question from Glenn, which was, were there many or any other tourists in Bologna, or were you feeling like it wasn't as big of a tourist draw?
Well, there were lots of people attending the festival. All right, now I have to find where this thing is shared. Maybe I'll just drag this over here. There were lots of people attending the festival. So they were the main tourists that were there. And then there were a couple of other tourists, but it wasn't really overrun. You know, the fact that uh, I could get around, but you know, and the festival, I was one of the only civilians there. I mean, every person I talked to, oh yes, I teach at the Department of Cinema Studies at the University of Pennsylvania. Or the Netherlands has a great thing for restoring cinema. So there were those tourists there. But other than that, there were a couple. But I mean, this is probably like going to Cannes when the Cannes Film Festival is going on. You know, that's what people are there for, to see the films. I could show you the list of the films I saw, and we'll see if that. All right. So anyhow, these are some of the. So you can see this is obviously a doorway. This one was a very good dentist's door, much nicer than the next one, Clinica Dentale. I think these guys sold toys, and look, you know, the artist has signed it, so that looks like, oh, again, Wonderland. Yeah, that must be that's the cat and the rabbit. Okay. Everybody knows what that is. Coffee shop, love it, with music, evidently. This one was a beauty salon, Irene. You know, it's a product. Pasta. How can you beat pasta? Okay. Oh, discount store. Everything for €1. Well, guess what that was? I guess tattoo is multilingual. Who knows about body decorators and since 1988, but they did a great job on this one.
Debbie's saying this feels like the Italian equivalent of pub signs in England.
Exactly, yeah. But it's strictly Bologna, I mean, because there's no room for a window, or you can't have a window and a door because the real estate is at such a premium. There's obviously pizzeria. Oh, mortadella is the special meat of Bologna, and could, in addition to bolognese sauce. So this guy is selling bread and mortadella sandwiches. All right, so here's another, just looks pretty. I'm not quite sure what these guys are selling or not selling, but here are the two towers and there are the hills outside of town, painted again on those metal striations, those metal grates. Antiquities, antique store. Again, I showed you this one. Again, the two towers and the lighthouse. Who knows what this person is selling? Again, I think they must be selling hair stuff, or maybe it's a hairstyling salon. I don't think I ever, a couple of places I went by during the daytime so I could see what the store really was. But again, this was early in the morning when they were all closed and I could see the grates. Now, unclear if this is a business. This is not the grates. This is just, you know, a dual-sided wood door, but it also got painted. But here, the Officina Kurtz is right next door. They look revolutionary. Okay, wines and liquors, looks pretty obvious, looks very nice. Oh, another barber shop. That one's interesting. More pizza. It's a bowly. Whatever they're called. Okay, so here's coffee and you know, farmers, you know, free market coffee or farm market coffee. Very nice. Oh, I have no idea what this is. It looks like
Flower
a
shop?
cafe, but they've decorated it with the daisies. So who knows? But it is definitely a cafe, Cafe
Oh
della
yeah,
Maria.
yeah.
Oh, here's a tailor, camiceria. There's a sewing machine and the tape measure. Who knows what this is? I hope it's a bar. Oh, hairdresser. Rental agency. There's the Twin Towers again. Not a clue, just a decoration. Oh, right, so this must be farther out of the center of town because there's a little archway and a you know, the setback walkway to get into the building. More tchotchkes, not quite sure what that is. Oh, this one looks like a toy store. Just the inventiveness of it. Oh, and this is my favorite, the 24-hour plumber. First aid, 24/7. A plumber, and there he goes to the rescue.
So
Tricks.
I guess there isn't much graffiti in that city, is there?
Well, yeah, look, there's graffiti all over the place, but you know, it's got to be on brick or stone, and they don't really like it. And I'm not sure, you know, if it were a historical building, how they would take to it. But yeah, it's all over the place over
Well, it's
here.
nice that they don't damage these pictures. They're
Yeah,
kind of
they
respectful.
mostly don't because these are businesses. And then there's again, looks like a private residence with the with, you know, you see the little doorknobs there, the two-sided door with the twin towers depicting the city. And I think that's the end.
So you have at least one person who would like to see the list of films. So why not throw it up there?
Okay, list of films. Let's see. Where is it?
If there are any other questions for Leslie, please do put them in the Zoom chat. Otherwise, we're going to wind down after we see this list. I also want to remind everybody that next Friday night, we'll have Jacqueline Gickow talking about cross-state tours she did in Iowa, the RAGBRAI, and Carolina. And I guess I got to work on Ed and Debbie and others to come and talk about this trip that was taken to the Loire Valley. I'm very curious to hear about that. We also have Chris is going to do Ride with GPS next week, and then I think I'm going to let him do an overhaul of my bike the week after. And anybody who has a bike in need of any unique and deep kind of repair, remember you can let us know, and Chris will work on it for you on one of our Wednesday night mechanicals. Here we are. Here's the list. Thank you.
Also, it goes on and on and on. I mean, I was there. So it started. The premiere was the 23rd of June, and went through the 2nd of July, and I think there's 34 films on here.
You saw them all? You saw them all?
No, there were like hundreds of films. These are the 34 I saw. And there was a Cirque festival, Douglas Cirque, and there was a Mitchum festival. And then there's stuff from, Fish is Fish, a cartoon featuring the Katzenhammer Kids in 1917. And, here they unearthed an Italian silent movie from 1917, which was absolutely wonderful. And, some of them I'd seen previously.
Wait, what was the Patsy like? You wrote Black?
No, that's not one of my favorites. But here, I love the Cirque, All That Heaven Allows. Oh, Lois Weber. They've just been restoring her stuff. A documentary was made out of her. A female director back in the 20s who was a box office phenomenon. Who remembers Lois Weber? So, they had some stuff. So again, there's a silent, and it had intertitles in Italian and English. Some new stuff. And that's it. Oh, an early Abogance from 1923, French. And, some modern stuff. So it was just magnificent. And, I just checked the website. They're still listed for like June 20th this year, but I can't imagine that it's going to happen. Oh, here's a great one, The Trial of Vivian Ware. It's the same source material as the musical Chicago. It's the first movie about it. Just wonderful, I mean, some of it I had seen before, but it was seeing it and with people who really appreciate it. And, it was just.
Let's Get Lost. Great biopic on Chet Baker.
Oh, yeah. Whatever that one was. Let's Get Lost. Yeah.
Who's Chet Baker, Ken? Why don't you write that in there too? Educate me.
All right. So that's it. It was a great trip. Wish I'd had more time, but such is life.
So I'm going to continue a new tradition because we have everyone on mute, but as we say goodbye, it's good to have it in the chat, but I'm also going to unmute everyone and let you all give a big hand for Leslie. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
And we'll wish everyone to stay healthy and stay strong, and we'll see you in upcoming virtual events. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Be safe. Bye-bye.
Bye, Leslie. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks again. Yep.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.